the film is a product of a class that I teach. And I'm in the management department. My area of expertise is referred to as strategic management, which is basically the study of what top-level executives do. What I'm teaching right now to the MBAs is a required core class called strategic management that they take for the whole semester in the second semester of their first year. I also teach PhD classes, executive classes, and I teach an MBA elective called the Art of Leadership. And the Art of Leadership is based on the premise that there's a lot to be learned from leadership about leadership through studying the humanities. So I teach a class called the Art of Leadership that is based on materials from novels, movies, speeches, letters, and so on. One of the pieces that I use in that class, and I have used since the start of the class, is Martin Luther King, Jr.'s Letter from Birmingham Jail. Okay? In the early 60s, during the Civil Rights Movement, 1962, Dr. King led a march in Birmingham, okay? And as a result of that march, and it was the whole nonviolent philosophy and so on, and as a result of that march, he and a lot of other people were arrested and put in jail. While he was in jail, there was a letter published in the local Birmingham paper signed by 8 white clergymen, okay? And basically what they did was they decried his presence there, saying that, it's unfortunate that people from outside come in and so on, and can't we work this out just locally, and kind of asking for a less, what they felt was confrontational action on the parts of African Americans. In response to that letter, he then wrote what became known as the Letter from Birmingham Jail. And he started writing it on toilet paper, in the margins of a newspaper that was given to him by one of the custodians in the jail, and then on a note tablet that was given to him by his lawyers. The letter was subsequently published as a pamphlet by the Quakers. Okay. How many of you ever are even familiar with the Letter from Birmingham Jail? Okay. If you were a student in Germany, if you were a student in a number of European countries, it is required reading. If you were a student in Germany, when I've taught this course, all German students have to study the Letter from Birmingham Jail because of their discriminatory past, because of what the Holocaust revealed. And it's meant to help sensitize people to the situation of the difference between haves and have-nots, the justification for discrimination, and so on. I became aware of it only, long after that it was written, and it's a tremendously powerful piece of writing and literature. The language is vivid, and what I use it for in my class is, it serves a variety of purposes. In leadership, among the things I use it for is to illustrate the role of language in leadership, okay? If leadership is about somebody describing to people the way things are, and then contrasting it with the way things could be, and then convincing them that I can get you from here to here, okay, your use of language becomes a powerful tool in both describing this and this and convincing you I can get you from here to here. His language is just very vivid. The logic is compelling, and so on. There are other reasons to use it. When I've used it historically in my class, the letter is the rights to it are controlled by the King estate, and the King estate, Dr. King's surviving family members control the rights to that and his other writings. And there's a school in upstate New York called Hartwick Humanities Center, or Hartwick Humanities Institute, that has put together lots of materials that are used to teach leadership lessons using things like excerpts from great novels, Plato's Republic, from speeches and so on. And they have the publication rights to that. So for years, when I've done this class, I've gone to them and gotten copies of the letter from Birmingham Jail from my students. And invariably what we would do is the students would read it, and then we would come into class and I would lead a discussion of it, okay? A couple of years ago, I was getting ready to put together the syllabus. I contact the person at Hartwick about, they periodically have new materials. They'll have somebody who has taken a movie and excerpt or cut clips from that movie, like I use Hoosiers and Apollo 13 and so on. And I'll find out what they've added. When we were going through the materials for my class that it was going to teach a couple of years ago, I said, and I'm going to use Letter from Birmingham Jail again. And the director of the institute said, have you ever thought of having somebody read it? I said, well, what do you mean? And his response was, it's one thing to read the letter, it's something else to hear it. So my wife and daughter are interested in theater, and immediately what I thought was, gee, what I should do is I'm going to get somebody to do a dramatic of reading of the letter in my class. So I contacted the theater department and the head of the acting program. I told him what I wanted to do, and he said, I've got just the guy. And he had a 30-year-old, third-year master student in acting. And what I did was I worked in a guy named Corey Jones, and I worked with Corey, and he prepared the letter, and he came to my class and did this dramatic reading of the letter. And it's really powerful. And it's not something you can memorize, because it is, just to read it takes 45 minutes. So we had to set up the classroom in a particular way so that he had scripts that he could refer to. Then after he did that, and that was really well received, what I decided was, man, it would really be cool to make a film of this. So what I wanted to do was, how do we make a film? You're not going to film just somebody reading this letter. So I contacted the head of the acting program. He put me in touch with somebody in the film program. It's film, television, and radio, I guess. And I told them what I want to do. I want to make a film of the letter from Birmingham Jail. I've got the actor and so on. And they then hooked me up with a recent graduate of their master's program in film by the name of Yaki Smith. And Yaki had his student film shown at Cannes Film Festival. He's won awards for his films, and he was working as a lecturer here. We got the two of them together. They talked about it. Yaki took the letter and went away, and he came up with a really creative way to present the letter or present the writing and reading of the letter as a film. And what you'll see is we've got Corey. At times he'll be sitting in a jail. And the jail scenes are shot in the old jail in Georgetown, Texas, just north of here. Then there are some of the letter is very theological. Okay, King was a preacher. His father was a preacher. His grandfather was a preacher, and so on. And some of the letter directly addresses the church community. So some of the scenes are shot in a church in South Austin where he is at a pulpit delivering it. Yaki had to come up with ways to, well, you can't have somebody reading and you can't memorize the whole thing. You will see some parts of it, he will be sitting thinking, and he'll hear his voice. There'll be voiceover. Other parts, he'll be sitting at a little desk in the jail writing, and you'll be hearing his voice. Other parts, he will be standing, holding the bars, looking at you, reciting it that way. And so one of the things that struck me when I finally saw the film when we cut it was how creative. Well, we have some really good students on this campus, and they're not all in the business school. I mean, we have really good students in the business school. We have some great students on this campus, and how good the actor is, and how good the filmmaker is, and they're products of departments in this school. Now, the people at Hartwick want to use this film and make it available when people buy the letter from Birmingham Jail. We've talked, we'd like to have it on PBS during Black History Month. Problem is, you get it on PBS, the only one that's going to be influenced in it, who happens to be watching it that night. So we're still kind of dealing with, we've got to get the approvals from the King estate to have it released. We can use it in a context like this anytime we want. He wrote the letter, and a little background why this would be of interest to me. Civil rights movement in this country was at its height when I was a young person. When I was in high school and college, it was at its height. The civil rights movement was taking place when television and live coverage was really starting. So no matter where you were in the US, if you were around during that time period, you had this presented to you all the time. So I have very vivid memories of this time period. What you'll see in the video is it will start out with some scenes from the civil rights movement that Yaki has worked into the film. The first about 4.5 minutes are, you'll hear a voice with kind of a southern accent, and what that is someone is reading the letter that the white clergyman wrote to the Birmingham paper that provoked King's response. So what you'll hear is they're kind of criticizing him there and saying, you know, why are you here, and so on and so on. And then you will see Corey start his response. And the entire thing is about, it's about 57, 56 minutes long. What we had hoped to do was to have the context of the letter available for you so you could read along with it. Because it's so long, the cost of printing it, I think they felt was prohibitive. You'll also see during the showing of this, at times the color is better than others. We could correct that, but it takes a lot of money, and right now we don't have a lot of money. And occasionally you'll hear a difference in the sound depending on the setting in which it was shot. What I'd like you to do as you listen to it, I mean, again, I use it for illustrating the role of language in leadership. I think it's also very potentially educational to understand the situation in this country at the time, to understand the perspective of someone who was African American in this country at the time, told in a very, very vivid way. So there's lots to learn. People, I think, maybe people of your generation, because when I teach it with my MBAs, and even when I taught it with them a dozen years ago, most of them know very little about King. Most of them know relatively little about the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King, Jr. was a prodigy. He graduated from college when he was 19 years old. He has a doctorate in theology from Northeastern. He's a very unique person, and he came from a family, actually a pretty well-placed family in Atlanta. I mean, he was as he'll point out he's the son, grandson, great-grandson of preachers, and it shows in his language. Now, Corey, the guy that plays or that presents King, when we were practicing the night before, and actually he performed it in this classroom, when we were practicing the night before, I commented to him when he finished how good he was with the intonation and the voice and so on of King. And it turns out Corey did his undergraduate degree at Washington University. When he got out of WashU, for 2 years he was part of an African-American theater company. And one of the things that they did that was part of their repertoire is they had a program about King that they performed in schools all over the St. Louis area. Unbeknownst to me, he always played the character King. So he had a particular history with the voice and the diction.